And there we go. And so thank you so much, Dame Stephanie, Shirley, Steve, for gifting us your time today for this Silver Wisdom interview in the Silver Tent. And I'm afraid it's back to front, but I've got this copy of one of your books here. And this is what started it all. My mum was gifted this at Christmas, and she couldn't put it down, and she kept saying, oh, you have to read this, you have to read this. So what I want to do is just read what it's on the back so that we can just create some context. And I love what it says here: an extraordinary tale of creativity and resilience, from The Guardian. And it says, in 1962, Stephanie Steve Shirley created a software company when the concept of software barely existed. Through Freelance Programmers, Steve empowered a generation of women in technology, giving them unheard of freedom to choose their own hours and manage their own workloads. The business thrived, and Dame Stephanie Shirley gradually transferred ownership to her staff, creating 70 millionaires in the process.
I'm very proud of that.
I'm not surprised. They're just awesome. So Let It Go, this book, explores her trailblazing career as an entrepreneur, but it also charts her incredible personal story, her dramatic arrival in England as an unaccompanied Kindertransport refugee during World War II, and the tragic loss of her only child, who suffered severely from autism. Today, Dame Stephanie Shirley is one of Britain's leading philanthropists, donating her money and time to charities that are close to her heart. In Let It Go, she tells her inspirational story and explains why giving her wealth away, letting it go, has brought her infinitely more happiness and fulfillment than acquiring it in the first place. And the Financial Times says this engrossing story of an extraordinary life is filled with lessons in what it means to be human.
That's the bit I like. I like the FT, yes.
Yes, it's just wonderful. And so I'm so excited that you're here. And I wanted to start right at the beginning and get this sense of you arriving as a tiny child in England, just with your sister. And the question is really about that experience of landing in the UK, being looked after by a couple that you'd never met before, and I don't think you even spoke their language. Is how did that shape you and, you know, served you to become the woman that you are now?
Well, that's a very astute question to start with, because your implication is right. It made an enormous difference to me. That start defines what I was as a young woman, what I was as a middle-aged woman, and what I am now in the Silver Tent. It doesn't get any weaker, because it was such a traumatic experience that to face a new country, new language, new food, new parents, new culture, everything. But having got through that, nothing much throws me anymore. That what else can happen to me? I've been a refugee, as you say, I've lost my only child, I've had cancer and recovered. You know, these things are now behind me. What it did for me in the short term was that it made me very determined, in a very priggish way, to lead a life that was worth saving. And that's not really a healthy emotion for a child. But it was there, and it drove me to some perfectionism. It drove me eventually to a whole lot of survivor guilt. You know, how come that I survived when 1 million children died in those years? How can I justify that I was one of the lucky ones? And that means I don't fritter my time away. And I've also become a real patriot. This country is not perfect, but I love it with a passion that perhaps only someone who has lost their human rights can feel. I love this country. I'm in tears when I see the White Cliffs of Dover. This sort of sentimental thing is deep in my personality. So that's me, not always a refugee, but definitely based on that refugee start.
I was so touched by that sense of having to prove that you were worthy of saving. And I can really sense that striving, throughout your life. And look at what, I know that might have been unhealthy as a child to feel that, but what you've achieved has been absolutely phenomenal through that drive.
When you look at the achievements in a variety of fields of that wave of emigres that came out from Nazi Europe at that time, I've just done the obituary for somebody else. Again, his refugee start is so important to him, and he's done a lot in the information technology industry, which became my industry. So I think it's fairly general to want to develop that unique experience.
Beautiful, thank you. And one of the things that really came through in the early part of the book was how you've been such a champion for women from really early on. And I wondered what it was that made you choose women, because it would have been so easy to have chosen refugees or Jewish people or any number of things. Why women in particular?
Well, it's slightly illogical that women, we behave as if we were a minority. And the illogicality of that really drove me. I am a woman. I felt patronized and belittled by that. So I was fighting for myself and then all the other women for whom I've opened doors. But also in a negative sense, I didn't want to be to focus on the refugee start. I was trying to get away from that. I'm more British than the British. I don't want to be always categorized as, well, of course, she came from Vienna or whatever it is. Because of that survivor guilt, I think I wanted to move away and diversity generally, it's not just women. We've got Black Lives Matter at the moment now, and I don't know a lot about it, but I'm certainly an ally. This is something I believe in. This is something I will fight for. And I will always speak out, which people sometimes don't like, that if somebody uses an expression that's unacceptable, I will always speak out. You have to.
I get this real sense of your passion for inclusivity, really.
Yes. People are so wonderful, so potentially exciting team workers. Good, the vast majority of people are good and concentrate on doing the right thing. Whereas a few people drive the world by making a mess of things. And we just have to learn to live with that compromise.
Yes, thank you. And I noticed that you have quite a few first women in your family. Your grandmother was one of the first women mayors. And I wondered what kind of legacy that left you, knowing that.
At the time, I don't think I realized it. But I got quite close to my grandmother, closer than to my mother, actually. And she always struck me, she was in her 80s when I really got to know her, and I was in her late teens. She was interested in fashion, she was interested in art and theatre and politics and family. And I thought, I think she has influenced me because to a certain extent, I can see myself becoming more like that. I still want to be doing new things. I want to follow things. I'm very sad when I don't have the energy to do something that I would normally do. I'm very proud of her. She has a street named after her in Dortmund, which is in Western Germany, Rosa-Buchhaus-Straße, forgive my German. She was also a fighter for women's rights. The family was secular Jewish, so in normal circumstances, we didn't suffer from anti-Semitism. It was only really with the Nuremberg laws in Germany, when Hitler came to power, that anybody, even a 16th Jewish, would be in severe problems. And my sister and I were called Mischling, crossbreed, because our father was racially Jewish and my mother wasn't. So we were crossbreed. I mean, the whole thing was disgusting.
Wow. I can sort of semi-imagine what it was like, but not fully embody what it must have been like. And I'm just so delighted that you found your way here. And I'm sure that there must be at least one street named after you already. And if not, there will be, I'm sure. I'd love to know, the company that you set up, Freelance Programmers. What did you most love about creating that?
But it was a bit negative, because really my original company was not to make money or anything like that, but it was a crusade for women. I was determined to show an organization that could be family friendly, that could be flexible to the extreme, and at the same time could be commercially viable and make money. After 25 years, we did make a little bit of money, or at least I made a lot of money. But it's I'm not a natural businesswoman. I'm an entrepreneur. I like to start things. I like to do new things. I like to make new things happen. And starting a company was exciting, all-consuming. I didn't know what I was doing at all, so I had to learn very fast. I think of myself as a scientist. I'm a mathematician by degree, but I follow the scientific method. You try things out, see if they work. Change if they don't. And so resilience is something that's very important, I think, to entrepreneurs, because somehow whatever happens, we've got to survive to work again tomorrow.
I so agree, and I really get that sense of the flexibility required to change path and to be really aware of what's happening and be able to come up with different plans here, there, and everywhere when necessary. And I know that, having read the book, is how many times you had to really address different things and be ready for that change. And so my next question is more of an open question in a way. It's like, do you think that anyone can do anything if they put their mind to it, no matter their background, their education? Yeah, do you think anyone?
No, I mean, the short answer is of course not. I mean, you couldn't make me into a footballer, no matter how much I tried. I just don't coordinate hand and eye, and certainly not foot. But I do believe that most of us don't make enough of the skills and potential that we have. And it can be a driving force. It can be fascinating. And it means that skills turn into achievements, and potential grows into, well, I am now the person that I might have aimed to be 10 years ago. I believe it's very important to concentrate not on what things we want to do, but the sort of person we want to become.
I love that answer very much, very much. I mean, the Silver Tent was set up to challenge convention around older women and support us to regain our sense of being wise elders, and through that having a role to play in our world. And I wondered, how do you see older women being of value in our world today?
Well, knowing we were going to meet, I thought about it, and I was reminded of the autumn crocus, which blooms very late in the year. And I think this is what happens. We become more experienced. We're much more able to deal with nuances. We have opinions. We have experiences. And I think as you get older, you see things with a clarity that you don't when you're young. The motivation may be the same, but the sort of the vision is quite different. And of course, we also accept responsibility for our own actions. And so often it's, oh, if this didn't happen, she did that, I was unlucky, and so on. Well, I know that what I do, I have to do. what I fail in is my mistake. And it's a mistake I'm not going to make again, because I aim to always make new mistakes. But I'm learning a lot. I think maturity also gives sometimes a certain charm, I hope. It gives that invisibility, certainly, that everybody talks about. It's when you're wealthy, the invisibility is not quite as opaque as it might be. But you do have to find a different role in most of society, and not just by going back and doing things with youngsters. I think they're golden years, really. I think I'm happier now than I have been, except in my early married life. And that's a long period. But I'm very content now. I don't get depressions. I don't get uptight. I get tired. My feet hurt. And some weeks I seem to be spending, one day at the oculist, one day having my feet done, the next having my teeth done, just to keep myself going. But life is good, and life is very precious.
It's so wonderful to hear that you're happiest now. And, that's something I'm really exploring, this idea that as we grow older, we can still be happy and maybe happiest. So it's really great to hear. And I love this idea that you want to make new mistakes. And I think that's such a valuable thing to move forward with at any time of our lives, that it's okay to make mistakes, but preferably new ones, so that we learn from those too.
Yeah, I think we can also put the experience that we've learned to good use, not just keep it internally, but make something of it. Mentoring younger people, I think, is a very positive thing for women to be doing. It's not just thinking of yourself, perhaps thinking for yourself, but not thinking of yourself.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. And I know that you took risks to keep your values intact. And I wonder if you could share a bit about how important it is for us to put everything on the line in that way. So for something that we're passionate about, for something that we really love, how important is it to put everything on the line?
Well, I suppose if you have, if you're an Einstein or something like that, you can get by with part-time amateur interest, but most of us are just average. And we have to push and shove and think and rework and have that enthusiasm for getting the job done if we're to get anywhere. Throughout life, I think there are points of significant choice, and they're nearly always the moral ones. It's not whether you buy a bungalow or a house or what's perhaps what the sort of man you marry, I suppose, but most of the really difficult choices are ethical, where there's a choice where you do something that is in your own interest or you do the right thing. And you've got to learn to see it as clearly as that, and make the right decision and move forward. I'm very conscious of the times that in my business I did things that I knew were right, but that would lose me the client. People's employment, that has to be worked through. Such decisions are in no way obvious, and they do take a lot of thrashing through. My field is computing, and at the moment the exciting things that's going on is artificial intelligence. And there we have, we're learning the problems of artificial intelligence, wonderful though it is, to make sure that it does pursue only ethical paths. And what you and I think ethical today is different to what it was considered so 50 years ago, and will change again. It is dynamic. So we have a lot to battle with always, if we're to grow ourselves, grow our communities, and help our countries.
I remember someone a few years ago saying to me that it takes a long time to build a reputation, and if you lose that reputation, it's really hard to regain it. And I sort of want to replace reputation with integrity, that people know us by our integrity, and if we lose that integrity, then I'm
Yes,
not sure we can ever replace that.
Yeah, there's a lot of false news at the moment. It's a fairly modern thing. And how can you tell when you don't know where news comes from, whether it is true or false? If you know where it comes from, if it comes from me, you will guess that it is true. If it comes from somebody else who should be nameless, you may guess differently. So these are issues that come into all aspects of life, right and wrong, the ethics of being a full human being.
Thank you, thank you. And I know that you wanted to share some information about your books with us. And I really want to invite you to share what you want to share, and to incorporate in that, how can the Silver Tent be of service to you?
Well, being very serious, I mean, the Silver Tent can act as a sort of ally to women, and the other field I work in a great deal is autism. But you can also buy my books, and these are on behalf of charity, so that gets there. You've kindly already mentioned Let It Go, which is my memoir. Difference between a memoir and an autobiography is that this is what I remember, what I felt, whereas an autobiography is more factual, what happened. And I think that makes this very readable, as your mother found, that it's all human life is there, and it takes me up to my philanthropy. My second book is during lockdown. Lockdown, and we could no longer go out. I could no longer give speeches. I could no longer sell books, go to events. And what am I going to do? What's my team going to do? And I decided to put together an anthology of some of my speeches over the past 40 years. So there's quite a variation. And they cover several themes. I mean, starting with my refugee start, but then going on to my woman's company and women in general, and philanthropy and the British Computer Society. And I've had a wonderful time putting them together. And then even more so, when the disappointment came from Penguin, who published Let It Go, decided that they didn't like a book of speeches. They said they don't sell. So we self-published. It's called So to Speak. And in fact, we've sold quite a lot since Christmas, because we've only been going since Christmas. And it seems to be hitting the spot. So have a go, sold purely on behalf of Autistica, one of my autism charities. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. I definitely, I haven't read that one, but Let It Go, honestly, is just a phenomenal book. And so I can only imagine that So to Speak is going to be an awesome book. And I really get the sense of the value that we'd receive as women by reading this as well. There's a real sense of being so anchored in who we are and our ability to create impact in our world.
Everybody can make a difference, and you've summarized that beautifully, Francesca.
Lovely, lovely. I just see the ripples, around you now and around us now as your words land and your presence with us lands, which is just absolutely wonderful. So I would love to see if there's anyone here that would love to ask Steve a direct question. Yes, Nikki Mariana.
Listening to you talk, which is inspiring, I understand the concept of get on and do it. If it's a mistake, learn from it. And that will help you in the future. Do you ever come across situations where you think, I'm undecided? I don't know if this is going to have the right effect. I don't know if this is going to have the benefit. How would you deal with something like that if you came across it?
Well, in business, you very often come across it in a very formal sense when you have business decisions to make, and you've got a board that is split and doesn't know which way when. And as chairman, the guideline is quite clear. If in doubt, don't change the status quo. So don't change unless you're sure that it's, well, not sure, but unless you feel that it's going to be the right thing. So I don't get stuck on that one, because I've got this one simple rule which stands in good stead. If in doubt, you don't change.
That's great.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. The way that I look at it is that I'll know when I know, like, and if I don't know, it's because I don't know. And at some point that it's like there's a knowing that kind of lands from somewhere.
Yeah. I think it was Galbraith who sort of said some people don't know, but others don't know that they don't know. That's the danger.
Yes, absolutely. So we need to make sure that we're the ones that know when we know and know when we don't. Beautiful. Thank you, Nikki Mariana, for the question. Is anybody else wanting to ask a question? Yes, Mary.
Hello, it's lovely to listen to you, Steve. I think I first came across you in about 1991 when I was studying with the Open University on an MA in education, and the first module was gender and education, and I was looking a lot at women in science and technology, all those subjects. But I was wondering, in your experience, how obviously things have changed hugely in the time you've been working in the field. What would you think is the most important issue for women now going into all these new fields, such as artificial intelligence, or all those sort of how the challenges that are confronting women at the moment?
Well, a lot of things are opening up to women, but the proportion of women in the STEM industry, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, has been around about the mid-teens, which is disgustingly low for years and years, and is hardly changing. University of Durham has set up a plan to really get equal involvement of women in the STEM subjects. And within 2 or 3 years of deciding that that's what they were jolly well going to do, they have achieved that. They're up in the high 40s already. So it can be done, but it requires you are going against a society in which men are in the default position. We say him or her. The assumption always is of male. There's some interesting books being done recently about how design is geared for men, and so women actually miss out in medicine, in medical diagnosis. In some of the designs of the early seat belts, for example, were absolutely hopeless for women. I'm not sure that they're good for pregnant women either at the moment. But many, many instances where you have to be eternally vigilant to make sure that not women as an unnatural minority, or blind people, or people without sight, people without hearing, autistic people, people in wheelchairs, people of different sexual orientation. You always have to think, am I shutting them out, or am I opening the doors for other people to go through?
Thank you.
Beautiful, thank you. Is anyone else ready to ask a question? Yes, Vanessa.
The wonderful inspiration that you're speaking about, I was curious, what's your one greatest dream at the moment?
Well, it's a dream that I've been pursuing, I suppose, for 20 odd years now. Seriously committed to trying to understand what the condition of autism is all about. I can recognize autism in a child the other side of the playground, but we still don't know really what it is. So we don't quite know how to open doors for people with autism. Foolishly, I set a target at one time that I would halve the global cost of autism by, I think it was 2014 or something like that, but a day long past, so I don't often talk about this. But it is very difficult to make those sorts of changes. And the main cost changes for autism is through employment. And so I spend a lot of time trying to persuade people to understand that a different way of looking at the world is a very positive asset for your organization as well as for you individually.
Thank you. And thank you, Vanessa, for that question. Anyone else got a question for Steve? Yes, Sandra.
Thank you, Steve. That was really interesting. I guess two things that I find quite difficult to bring together in my life, and one of them is being happy on one side, and I loved your idea that one way we can change the myth of older women is by being happy. But that alongside putting the interest of others before my own interest, that's not always easy to do. Do you think there are ever exceptions?
I expect there are, Sandra, but generally I find that when I give something, I get so much pleasure from the gift, way, way above the value of the gift to the person. But it's very much a reciprocal relationship. The recipient of the gift takes some pleasure, but I take enormous pleasure from it. And that's true whether you give anonymously or whether you give something that's very visible, that until very recently, I never allowed things to be named after me. I thought it was egocentric. As I get older, I find there's the odd Shirley room or Shirley lecture or Shirley scholars. And to be honest, I take great pleasure in these. And that's new. And I sort of think about it. Why should I suddenly? And it is this business of coming to terms with your own mortality, as we need to as we age, and realizing that we're leaving the world. We've made a mark on the world.
Yeah.
Thinking.
So there's happiness at a higher level in a way in that service. It's yeah, I think I get that.
I came across a study recently. Was talking about wealth and what wealth really is. And one of the things that came out of this research was that being wealthier does in fact make you happier, but only by a tiny amount, 0.5 point in a 10-point scale. So it does make a difference. And that how the wealth comes is also more important. For example, I'm much happier with my wealth, which is self-made, than if I'd won it on the lottery. It's the same amount of wealth, it buys the same amount of opportunities, but it does matter to me and to most other people. That came out of fairly recent research.
Thank you. That actually, I've got a question to ask off the back of that, which is, do you think then that you have to grow into your wealth rather than just have it arrive?
Yeah, well, I don't know about growing into it, but when you first have enough money not to be worried about getting to the end of the week and not to be worried about where you're sleeping that night and so on, life seems very easy and very comfortable. If you're not careful, you start then acquiring things or a way of life. That means you again start to worry about money. Can I afford a better yacht? Can I, and I'm quite serious. You see so many families move into a level where they're still worried about money. And I think if you live well within your income, it is just so comfortable and nice, which is what my husband and I do. You have to agree on something like that, though. I think he probably held me back at some time. I could get quite extravagant at times.
I remember something like 40 years ago or something, seeing a newspaper headline saying Khashoggi worried he's down to his last 10 million. And, and for me, it was like, what? But it was so interesting knowing that it was all relative.
And he was really genuinely worried. He would be. He was used to that.
Yeah, yes, it might have cost, his life might have cost 10 million a week or something, so he might have been worrying how he was going to live the next week. So that's great, thank you. We have a little time left if anyone else has a question for Steve.
Well, let me ask a question of you, Francesca. I do like the idea of targeting activities to mature women of 50, 60, 70 and beyond. I think it's wonderful. Where do you think the organization is going? Where would you expect to be in 10 years' time, say?
Oh, as an organization in 10 years' time. Thank you so much for that question. So my vision for the Silver Tent is that we create silver philanthropy, that what I create with the help of our membership is something so compelling that hundreds and thousands of women want to participate, and that their monthly membership would go into a philanthropic organization that we'll create. And the idea is that it would be self-sustaining. So I've just got this sense that there must be so many women over 50, 60, etc. and beyond that have maybe thought about a project, watched the television, watched the news, watched a documentary and gone, if only I could do something, but didn't have the financial resources or the expertise. And so I've got this sense that there is a raft of amazing business ideas or projects lying dormant in so many brains around the world. And I thought, if we create Silver Philanthropy, we could then invite our membership to submit their ideas. We'd have to have a board of experts to see whether they have legs and whether it's possible to make those ideas come alive. And then the membership would vote on which ones are worthy, I guess, or most attractive. And then we would serve them financially and with the expertise also from our membership to bring those ideas to fruition. And I think that the submissions would be not necessarily charitable, but they would be for projects and business ideas that serve humanity or serve the planet or serve nature. They've got to have that life affirming kind of energy around them. If I can imagine that the Silver Tent would be thriving in that role in 10 years' time, and we
would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
It
would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you all success with that. It is a very nice concept and mirrors what wealthy people have done. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, really have done that in spades. But there are more people without lots of wealth, can really do something. Best of luck.
Thank you. Well, the way that I saw it is that I think I've always wanted to be a philanthropist, and you know, I'm not in a position to be one. And I'm sure there must be thousands and thousands of people who would love to be philanthropists. And if we can create an enterprise where we're all part of that, but we don't have to be multimillionaires in order to be able to do it. It's the combination. Then, wow, that would be cool. So thank you.
Counter that by saying how I normally describe the difference between philanthropy and charity. I mean, if you put a coin into a street person's cap, that's a generous act of charity. But once you start thinking, what's this person doing on the street? Why isn't she in a job? Why isn't he in a hostel? Then you start thinking as a philanthropist, and that is true whether you're giving a few coins or a big, big check.
Yeah, beautiful. That's a wonderful illustration of the difference. And thank you. I hadn't really thought about it. And
you can be a philanthropist without having big money.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We've got to the time now, and honestly, what a privilege and what a treat to be in conversation with you, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for inviting me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and we will be behind you, buying your book, sharing as much as we can about you, and maybe talk to you again in the future. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Francesca.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.